How you doing? This is UK Fish ID videos. Through these series of films, I'm going to show you how to identify various British fish, both from the sea and fresh water. We're going to go through what they eat, where they live, and how to identify them from similar species. If you'd like to learn more about identifying UK fish, then why not get my latest book? It's available online and in local bookshops. There's a link in the description if you're interested. This week I'm looking at some of the kind of leftover silverfish, if you like. Eyed, Bleak, Chub, Dace and Sunbleak, and looking at how to tell apart all of these silverfish. Let's get into it. So in this video I'm kind of lumping together Chub, Dace, Eyed, Bleak and Sunbleak. Although I think some of these you're unlikely to mix up, there is a little bit of crossover between them, particularly when they're smaller, so that's why they're all together. I do this in every video as I feel it's very important. You can't positively ID any fish alone by its colour. Fish change colour so rapidly according to health, age, sexual dimorphism, stress and the environment they live in. So you can only use colour as a guide in conjunction with other more accurate signs. Let's start with chub. Chub are widespread in English and Welsh rivers and introduced into a few southern Scottish rivers. They do quite well in lakes, but they're unable to breed in them. It has a preference for running water from tiny streams to large rivers. Chub will often be found on the edge of the current in the slack, waiting for a meal. So that's not to say that you can't find chub in lakes, but they can't breed in them and they're not natural to them. So you're only likely to find chub in lakes if it's, say, a commercial fishery. In natural lakes, chub are a pretty rare find. In terms of behaviour, although chub don't look very predatory, when they're older they will readily eat small fish and crayfish, and like many cyprinids they have pharyngeal teeth, essentially teeth in their throat. On a carp these are more like molars for grinding, but in a chub they are sharp and thick for mincing up flesh. So out of all of the fish that I'm mentioning in this list today, chub are without a doubt the most predatory. If we want to look at features to ID them, they're a bulky and robust fish. They have a red tinge to the pectoral, pelvic and anal fins. The dorsal fin and the tail fin sometimes have a black colour to it also. Overall, the body tends to be bronze with large scales. Sometimes small chub are confused with dace, but they have a bigger mouth and the fins are convex compared to the concave fins of a dace. So again, this is a very good way of telling a small chub from a dace. Look at those fins. So the next one is the dace. Most British rivers will have dace from the Tamar in Cornwall to the Clyde in Glasgow. In terms of habitat, they're a fish of flowing water, but they like a bit of flow. That's not to say that they can't live in lakes, they just don't breed in them. So generally you find dace in more faster flowing rivers. In terms of behaviour, dace spawn much earlier than most other cyprinids, around February, which is thought to be an adaptation to allow the fry to take advantage of food in the spring and a head start over other fish fry. So if you see large groups of fish spawning early in the year, then there's a good chance they could be dace. This also is a reason why typically you don't get dace chub hybrids or dace eyed hybrids. Although they're possible, dace very rarely, if ever, hybridise with any other fish. The features on them are incredible. They have a silver coloration, normally with clear fins, although there can be a slight beige tinge to them sometimes, a slender body with large scales. Sometimes they're confused with small chub, but they have a much smaller mouth and the anal fin is concave. We can use size to ID dace and chub, as chub will get well into 3, 4, 5, 6 pounds plus, whereas dace very rarely get over a pound. So if you've caught something that's pretty decent, well over a pound, it's going to be a chub or an eyed. Anything under that could potentially be a dace, and you might have to look a bit closer. The next one is the eyed or golden orf. They're the same species. So golden orf are the ornamental variety that you get in garden ponds. Eyed are the natural variety that you might get stocked into fisheries. However, they're not native to the UK, they come from mainland Europe. They've been widely introduced mainly into fishing lakes in the UK, although there are a few established populations in rivers normally. They are actually generally a river fish like dace and chub. Because of this, it means that their distribution is all over the place. They're stocked into lakes all over the UK, and they're widely available from aquarium shops all over the UK, so Ide could pretty much turn up anywhere. So the features on an Ide, they basically look like a really big dace in many respects, but they get much bigger, up to 8 pound. They have smaller scales than a chub and a concave anal fin, so they're relatively easy to tell from chub again, with the chub being convex and the Ide being concave. The fins might have a slight red tinge to them, and they have a kind of silvery bronze coloration overall, except in the ornamental trade where they can be orange, blue or tricoloured. They have a smaller mouth than a chub, but slightly bigger than a dace, so they're kind of like in between dace and chub if you want to look at it that way. Now I've included bleak in this list as well. I don't think most people are going to mix up a bleak with a chub or an Ide. I suppose maybe a large bleak could be confused with a small dace, so I'll kind of go over it here. And there have actually been bleak chub hybrids made in labs, although this is really unlikely to happen in nature. So in terms of their distribution, bleak are native to eastern flowing rivers, but they have since been spread to many large river systems in England and Wales and are thought to be absent from Scotland. Again, there's no reason why they wouldn't live in a lake, but there aren't really thought to be any large lake populations of bleak in the UK. Their habitat preference is slow flowing rivers, and they also do very well in canals. In terms of behaviour, these fish can be quite numerous, hanging around in large shoals, often near the surface, waiting for a meal to drop in. The scales are quite delicate on a bleak. They come off very easy and they have a very bright silver glint to them. The mouth is upturned, and this is a very easy way to tell them apart from small chub, from small dace and from small Ide. They're the only one with a completely upturned mouth. The body is laterally compressed and very slim, whereas those other three fish are pretty bulky. The eye is large, taking up more space on the head, and they have a long anal fin with a keel to it. So I feel like bleak are fairly easy to ID from the others. The fish where you might get them mixed up with is the Sunbleak. Originally from mainland Europe, this species has since spread via the aquarium trade to many parts of southern England and moving north to the canal systems of the West Midlands. It likes small ponds, lakes, rivers and canals. It's not a fussy fish where it comes to environment, so unlike the bleak, which is pretty much only found in large slow flowing rivers, Sunbleak do equally well in ponds and lakes also. In terms of behaviour, these small fish can breed rapidly, and quickly making up large shoals, they can outcompete native fish fry. With Sunbleak there is some parental care, and males will tend to the clutch, which is normally on the stem of a water plant, and they provide the clutch with fresh water by nudging the plant. In terms of features, they do basically look like a very small bleak, except they don't get anywhere near as big. Sunbleak might only get to a few inches, whereas a normal bleak might get up to 7 or 8 inches, something like that. That'd be a very big one, but generally Sunbleak are much smaller. The easiest way to tell a Sunbleak from a bleak is the lateral line. If you look on a Sunbleak, it has a curved lateral line that stops halfway up its body. If you look at a normal native bleak, it's just a straight lateral line that continues throughout the body. So Sunbleak are the only fish in the UK to have this curved lateral line that stops halfway through the body. So even though they're small, they're a fairly easy fish to ID as long as you get a good look at the side of the fish. So I've touched on it briefly. Although hybrids are possible between all of these fish, they very rarely, if ever, happen in nature. So in fact, to the point where I don't have any photos to show you. There is occasionally a roach chub hybrid, and they do happen on a couple of rivers, although again, these are really rare also. So how to ID these fish from one another? Well, if we want to go by lateral line counts, Ide and chub are really easy to tell apart. So Ide have 56 plus on the lateral line count, whereas chub have 44 to 46. So if you get a good lateral line count, you can definitely tell a chub from an Ide pretty easily. The other way, as we've mentioned, is chub have a convex fin, while Ide and dace are concave. Chub have large mouths compared to the head size, whereas with Dace and eyed, the mouths are much smaller. Size is a feature in Dace, as they're unlikely to be over a pound, but eyed and Chub do get to similar weights. If we're looking at the Bleak, generally if it's a larger Bleak, it's just going to be a Bleak, whereas if it's smaller, it could be a Sunbleak. The lateral line stops halfway along the body of the Sunbleak, and that's a dead ringer for how to ID them. Apart from the Chub's slightly more predatory habits, they all have a fairly similar diet, all eating invertebrates and detritus, so we can't really use diet, although Chub pretty much eat anything. I've seen them eat fruit, they'll eat small fish, frogs, so they're pretty liberal. Anything that fits in their mouth, they'll have it. Don't forget, if you want to learn more about UK fish, do grab a copy of my book. There's a link in the description if you want to find out more. Hope you enjoyed that video. If you liked it, please consider subscribing to the channel. It takes 2 seconds for you and it really helps the channel out. Go and have a look at some of the other UK Fish ID videos we've got on the channel, as well as the underwater and angling content on here. See you next time. Cheers. If you enjoyed this vid, why not check out this other video right here? If you can, please subscribe to the channel. It only takes a couple of seconds and it really helps me out. I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.